Hey guys, Aaron Davis here, the Tattooed Preacher. This is video blog number 23. In last week's blog, I introduced the word covenant. Over the past, 10 weeks or so, I've been studying the subject of covenant, and actually I'm in the process of writing a thesis on the subject of covenant. I figured I'd share some of the stuff that I have been studying with you. It's my experience that a lot of people, whether Christians or not, don't really understand the covenant relationship that they have with God and how it applies to us today as Christians. In order to understand who we are today, we need to understand where we come from. This blog builds off of video blog number 21 and 22. So if you haven't seen those yet, check them out. I think that it'll help you better understand where we're going today. What is a covenant? A covenant is a conditional agreement, which is usually formal, between two or more persons to do or not do something specified. It's a binding agreement. There are actually several covenants that God's made with man throughout the Bible. We're going to deal with a few of them, specifically the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, which is also referred to as the law, and the new covenant. Today I want to talk specifically about the Abrahamic covenant. It's what the Mosaic covenant is built off of, it's what the new covenant is built off of, and it's the covenant that the Bible calls eternal. It's an everlasting covenant. So let's talk about the Abrahamic covenant. First of all, the Abrahamic covenant was a blood covenant. If you go back through history, you study the history of any culture, most every culture acknowledges a blood covenant. Even in our own culture, as a kid, I can remember discussing blood covenants or becoming blood brothers, which goes back to American Indian covenants, and where a man would slice his hand and another man would slice his hand. They would join together as a blood covenant or as blood brothers. And when they cut that covenant and the blood was shed, that covenant was forever. It couldn't be broken, and if it was broken, it was only broken by death. The Abrahamic covenant is a blood covenant. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, God begins to address Abraham as he's going to make covenant with him. Promises him that he is going to be a great nation, or he was going to give him descendants and make him a great nation. In Genesis chapter 15, which is just a few chapters later, God strikes a covenant with Abraham based upon the promises that he's previously made with him. And I want to read Genesis chapter 15, verse 1. It says, "After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram. It said, 'Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward.' But Abram said, 'O sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless?'" Now in chapter 12, he had promised him a child, or had promised that he would be the father of many nations, or he would make him a great nation. And so he's basically reminding the Lord that you promised me this, and I've yet to even have a child. Verse 3, "And Abram said, 'You have given me no children.' And the word of the Lord came to him, 'A son coming from your own body will be your heir.' Then the Lord took him outside and said, 'Look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them.' Then he said to him, 'So shall your offspring be.' Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He also said to him, 'I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give this land to you to take possession of it.'" Verse 8, "But Abram said, 'O sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it?'" Doesn't that sound like all of us? We have a promise made to us, but Abram says, "Hey, listen, I understand that you're promising me this, but how do I know that I'll gain possession of it?" And the Lord said to him, "Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon." Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite of each other. When the sun had set and the darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants I give this land." God made a blood covenant with Abram at that time. When Abram sacrificed the animals, God was making a covenant with Abraham that he would understand. He basically told Abram to do something that you already know. Bring me the animals, cut them in two, and I will make the blood covenant with you. I will walk through the blood, which was the custom at that time with Abram's culture. They would cut the animals in two, and then the people making the covenant would walk through the blood together. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 17. We started in 12, chapter 15, and now chapter 17. Genesis chapter 17 continues to reiterate the covenant that God made with Abraham. It says, "When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, 'I am the Almighty God. Walk and live habitually before me, and be perfect, blameless, wholehearted, and complete. And I will make my covenant solemn pledge between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly.' Then Abram fell on his face And God said to him, As for me, behold, my covenant, solemn pledge is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations, for an everlasting solemn pledge to be a God to you and to your succeeding future generations. And I will give to you and to your generations after you the land, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall therefore keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, throughout their generations. God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham and his seed. Now, Israel is named after one of Abraham's grandchildren, and the entire nation of Israel is understood to have been a product of the covenant between God and Abraham. Understanding the covenant that God made with Abraham is essential to understanding theology in general, because it's the basis from which everything else builds. The Mosaic covenant, the new covenant, any covenants that God has made with people since he made a covenant with Abraham has been built off of this covenant and is kind of like an addendum or an addition to this covenant with Abraham. Now, why are we even discussing this? Why does this have any application for today? Well, first of all, the covenant that God made with Abraham was an everlasting covenant. The aspects of the covenant, the promises of that covenant still apply to us today. As we continue to delve into this subject of covenant a little bit deeper next week with the Mosaic covenant, or the law, which are the rules that everybody seems to quote from the Old Testament, and that seems to bring up the most questions of any subject that I've dealt with here on MySpace. In order to understand that covenant, we have to first understand the Abrahamic covenant and where it came from. Interestingly enough, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity all acknowledge this covenant made between Abraham and God as part of their inheritance. It precedes the law and the Mosaic covenant, and it's the foundation on which the Mosaic covenant was built and established. Guys, stay tuned in the next couple of weeks. This teaching on covenant is going to get quite a bit deeper as we explore the rules and regulations of the Mosaic law, why it does or does not apply to us today, and ultimately what our covenant with God does entitle us to. Guys, I love you. I'm looking forward to hearing wonderful things from your lives. And as always, if you can dig it, say word. If love is